Hello, friends. Welcome back. So this is part 2 of the topic on how to get your voice back after childhood trauma. And I want to talk about how to get it physically back in the sense that you no longer have that vocal fry that I talked about in part 1, which, by the way, if you haven't seen part 1, I'll leave the link here, but you're definitely going to want to follow the sequence of this topic. Okay. So today we're talking about how to get your voice back physically so that you don't feel as if you can't get the words out, right? It's as if somebody is putting their hand on your throat. There's this invisible hand that's not allowing you to speak. We want to start overcoming that. And we also want to strengthen our inner voice, which is our connection to self. When that is disconnected, it's very disempowering because you're dependent on other people's opinions. You're dependent on how other people see or feel about things. And you're never really governing yourself from within. And we really want to find ways to feel empowered from within. Okay, so I have 3 tips that can help you. Let's dive in. Tip number 1 is about training your brain to look at something different. Okay, now what I mean by that is, as I mentioned in part 1 of this video, when you've undergone childhood trauma, your brain gets trained to be externally focused. It's constantly looking at what do they feel? What do they need? What's going on in them, right? It's almost like this surveillance that's consistently looking at everything outside of self. So we have to train our brain to ask different questions, to focus on different things. And by doing this, it's like we're tuning in to our inner voice. Think about a radio station, right? And you're on FM radio and the connection is bad, but you really, really love that song. So you're trying to tune in to get the best signal for that song. Well, with our inner voice, the reception to that voice is compromised. It's been compromised by the trauma. So we have to tune into it. Just like physically we would change that knob, well, mentally we want to change our questions. For example, instead of asking, what are they feeling? We want to start teaching our mind to say or ask, what am I feeling? Instead of, what do they need to be happy? We want to ask, what do I need to be happy? Instead of what's going on inside of them, we want to train our brain to ask, what's going on inside of me? Instead of, do they like me? We want to ask, do I like them? So it's about tuning our brain to look at different things. We want to start showing ourselves that we value our voice. We can't value our voice if we are asking questions and focusing on the external and what other people think, what other people need, how other people see things. We're completely bypassing what's going on inside of us. So my tip for you is to write down those questions so that you have them. You can put them on your phone so you can glance at them, and on a daily basis, see how often you're asking them. And if you're not asking them often, find areas in your life where you can start to ask those questions and retune and rewire your brain to listen to your inner voice. Tip number 2 is to start expressing your voice. Okay, if you notice that you're stifling your voice all the time and you're never speaking up, well, you want to start putting it into practice and exercising your voice. If tip number 1 is to start listening, tip number 2 is to start taking action on what you're listening to. However, you don't want to start with the most challenging place in your life. So if there's somebody in your life that doesn't listen to you and it's really something that you want to be able to do, you want to be able to have your voice heard, but this person is really intimidating or toxic and you're scared to do it, that's not the person to start with. I'm not saying you're not going to get there, but it's just like when you go to the gym. If you've been out of shape for a while, you're not going to go pick the heaviest weights there and start with those. You're going to build up to that. So pick someone in your life where you realize that you're stifling yourself, you're stifling your voice, and start in little ways making your voice known. So for example, an easy place to start would be with our family. Okay, if you're a parent, you might start with your children. You can ask yourself, do I have healthy boundaries? When I say no, because that's my voice, that's my inner voice is saying, no, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to give permission for this. When my children get difficult and unhappy because I'm saying no, do I give in? Because that's you now stifling your voice and not respecting your voice. Finding those little areas in small ways to exercise your voice is going to help you to strengthen your ability to allow yourself to be heard. Tip number 3 is to practice being comfortable in the discomfort of others. As you're voicing your opinions, your perspectives, as you're bringing your authenticity out for people, some people may not like that. And that's okay. Like, your job is not to make sure that everyone is happy. Your job is to be you and to give yourself permission to be you. So for example, if you start with something small with your children and you say no to something and they get mad, right? They're now not happy because you're expressing your voice. Then you have to remember that that's okay. Like, they're allowed to not be happy and you're still allowed to express your voice. That's a belief that we really need to strengthen, is that I'm allowed to share my perspectives even if others don't like them. I'm allowed to put down a boundary even if others get upset. I'm allowed to share my voice even if it's a different voice than somebody else's, even if somebody disagrees. We want to start giving ourselves permission from within, not waiting for somebody else to give you permission to be you. That was something you couldn't prevent in childhood, but now as an adult, you can give yourself that permission. Tip number 4 is to celebrate each tiny step that you take in this process, each tiny little step that you do to listen to your voice. And that may sound like a step that's irrelevant, but let me tell you something. If you don't do this step, it will be hard for these new behaviors and these new thoughts to sink into your subconscious programming. Our subconscious is biased to the negative. And if you've been through trauma, it's very hypervigilant to danger. And so when you do something good, it doesn't pay attention unless you celebrate it. For example, let's say you're on a hiking trip and all of a sudden you hear this helicopter and there's this loudspeaker saying, there are 3 wild grizzly bears that somehow escaped into the woods. Please exit as quickly as you can. And you're like in the middle of this hiking trail. You have to make your way back out to safety. And there's a beautiful tree that's blossoming. It's absolutely stunning. Are you going to pause as you're running as quickly as you can, or walking, whatever you're doing, as quickly as you can out? Are you going to pause and be like, wow, that is so amazing. That's gorgeous. No. The sunset might be amazing as you're leaving that hiking trail. Are you going to pause and be like, wow, look at that. That's just so gorgeous. I'm just going to take a moment of gratitude right now. No, you're not going to do that, because your brain's like, you need to survive. Get out of here. And any positive thing that is in your peripheral is going to be deleted and ignored by your brain, because survival trumps happiness. Well, as we're doing this healing journey, our brain does that too. It's so focused on survival, and it had to be if you underwent childhood trauma, that even now, as you're trying to focus on gratitude and beauty and taking control of your life and putting into practice things that help, your brain's like, yeah, whatever, danger, danger, danger. And it's looking for danger all the time. But when you pause and you celebrate, you're giving emotion, and the subconscious mind pays attention to emotion, to sensations. And it's like, oh, what's going on over here? And it starts seeing that the new behaviors that you're doing are something you are celebrating. Now you're helping your subconscious to know, this is a good thing. I want more of it. And your subconscious can start to help you instead of hinder you from that. Okay, those are 4 tips that can begin to help you. My next video is going to be about physically loosening up the throat chakra. So again, make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell icon so that you're notified of that next video.